I think the lesson with COVID-19, all of us have lived cluttered, decongested lives. We've lived overscheduled lives, and now is the time to release what's no longer serving us. And actually, if you think about it, when you're releasing things that no longer serve you, you're allowing the energy to flow. This is how we support our immune system. I just think it just couldn't be a clearer message with COVID-19. It's time to release what's no longer serving us. Okay, so my name is Nishti and I'm a dietitian. I call myself a specialist dietitian for children and parents because obviously you can't help the children if you don't sort out the parents. Now, a few years ago, I became very interested in conscious parenting because I've been raised very unconsciously by my sweet, lovely parents. I'm a refugee, born in Syria, raised in Denmark, and now I live in the UK. I try and incorporate conscious parenting and just try and bring mindfulness and consciousness into my work, because the problem is never really the child or the food. It's always more than that. And I felt quite silly early on in my career, always giving the same advice. And I just knew it wasn't substantial. And now I feel I can really dig deep with parents when they come with a child that doesn't want to eat, or a child that may have ADHD, or, you know, it's just wonderful to bring it all together. Food, conscious parenting, it just perfectly matches each other. So I'm very passionate about diet and nutrition.
I'd love to dive in and ask you, Nishti, to share some things that you're finding yourself called to do and working with parents all over the world right now. So, you know, I think emotionally, socially, physically, I mean, every which way, parents, people, we're all kind of going through our own emotions, our own turbulence, so to speak. So when it comes to serving the people that you serve, can you tell us a little bit about how you're guiding them today from the work that you do? I mean,
it's a very, I feel very humbled to be in a position to still continue to help parents, because it's an online platform. And the word that comes to me, Sue, and the word that I often discuss with parents and with friends and with family is decongestion. So decongesting or decluttering, because this is the time I really feel like with the COVID-19, for parents who are alone with their children and who, most of them want a meal plan because they're really struggling to feed their children and because they're with them both 3 meals a day. You know, again, having a meal plan in place is another way of trying to control things, right? So I always say, you can't pay me for a meal plan, because I don't believe in meal plans. They're just another way of trying to control and put something in place, when actually this is a way for the parent to really get to know their children, really get to know their appetite, really get to know their likes and dislikes, but also for the parent to really look at their own relationship to food. Because as most of us know, our relationship to food comes from an emotional place. And during this time of COVID-19, I see a lot of parents who can't stop eating, and can't organize a meal plan because they think that's the answer to this crisis, when actually it's a place for us to decongest, declutter, and flow, which brings me to the immune system, right? If you think about the immune system, it's energy flowing not just through your body, which obviously it does, but you know, it's energy through it flowing from your mind, body, soul. And when there is any blockages anywhere, this is going to affect our immune system. So I hope this answers your question, Sue. You know, I just think it's such a wonderful opportunity to learn about yourself, because every relationship we have is the relationship we have with ourselves. When it comes to food, it's a perfect mirror. Our children is a perfect mirror.
I think it's very interesting because the paradox that immediately comes to mind is getting food, right? You know, I know for me, we don't like to go to the grocery store. We don't want to step out of the house. And I'm not even in isolation yet, but I've self-isolated. So, you know, that's another battle, because if we don't want to go to the store, then we're managing with what we have. And if we're emotional eaters, you know, it's easy to go to the junk, let's say. And I'm not saying whether I am or am not an emotional eater, but maybe I'll talk to you after the show. So talk, I mean, this is, as you said, a great time to really tap into how we relate to food, nutrition, and the connection of it all. So how do you help people? Let's just talk about the emotional eating, because we're all emotional, right? And food's a go-to. I know I was taught that, you know, food is love, so to speak, right? So we go to our food to feel some love. Yeah. So how do you tackle that with your clients? And how do people listening, how do they tackle that?
So some people are very open to it and some people are not. And then I back off. I've learned to sort of back off if I feel that we are not in synergy, if that makes sense. Because when it comes to being an emotional eater, it always comes down to childhood and what our parents used to do and behave around food. Because food is, if we take, I've got a banana here, let's take some bananas. Bananas are just neutral, right? It's just food, they're not talking to us. But what happened in childhood is that, let's imagine I have a bowl of ice cream here as well, is that if you've been a good child, or if you've done well at school, or if you've scored plenty of goals at football class or lessons, then you'll be rewarded with ice cream, not a banana, right? So food was looked at as a reward. So we associate ice cream with, it's like a self-soothing, false mechanism. So you have to always go back to childhood, and all of us have had parents, or even I remember going to the dentist and then you get a lollipop because you've been a good child. You know?
How they make their money.
What has that to do with being So again, because you've been good, you're getting a food as a reward. Whereas if you've been, and even if you had a tough time at school, your mom or dad might have asked you, let's go and get some ice cream. Let's soothe you with some ice cream. So happy, sad feelings equals food. Happy, sad feelings did not equal, let's talk about it, or let me give you space to feel these feelings. I mean, who had parents who could do that, right? So this is where it comes from, in my humble opinion. Food was just the happy and sad go-to place. And that's why it's so hard to not emotionally eat. And that's why we want a menu plan with another thing that we think, you know, we can control without thinking that actually it's all about us listening to our body. But no one told us to listen to our body. We've been told to eat 3 meals a day by the government, and we've been told to eat certain amount of portions of fruit and veg and carbs and protein. I mean, every outside thing you can imagine has told us how to eat and how to behave and how to be. So how are we supposed to know, right? So it always comes back to childhood, Sue. So that's why when I have a child that's overweight and they can't stop eating, I always have to look at the parent and their relationship to food. And some parents don't get it because they think I can fix the child.
Yeah, and it's not about the child at all.
It's really, honestly, never about the child unless they have a chronic condition. So I also work with children with type 1 diabetes, children with cancer. Then it's a chronic I have to manage the child. But then it's often fear and anxiety projected on from parents onto the child that makes everything even worse than what it is. So then we're managing that. So I have a super interesting job because it's never the same. I tackle a lot of conditions, from eating disorder to allergies to cancer to diabetes. So it's so interesting and it's so vast. But being able to look at it from a conscious parenting point of view has really helped me to help parents. It's just been fantastic. But you have to be ready for it, don't you?
You do.
And I'm not a parent myself yet, So some people think, oh, you're not a parent yourself. What do you know? But I take that.
You know a lot.
Yeah. When do we ever know?
Nishti, would you tell us a little bit about what the biggest question is right now? I mean, I'm sure you have parents coming at you from all angles, because I know in my practice that parents are very fearful. So, the calls I'm getting and the information, that parents are sharing with me is that they're just afraid, and that anxiety, of course, and that fear is carried on to their children, or, kind of connecting to their children, because I'm trying to figure out how best to say this, the sponge effect. The children are just picking up all the energy from the parents. So can you talk a little bit about, what's coming to you today? What questions are parents specifically asking? Because they're not asking, I'm sure, about the meal plan.
No. Well, some are, because they want the perfect meal plan, because now it's all about boosting the immunity, which, by the way, as a registered dietitian, we can't really say that. We have to say support the immune system. So I just have to correct that because it's such a powerful word, and people get really, it's a nice marketing word, right? So, but essentially it's the same thing. They want the perfect meal plan or the perfect diet to support their immune system, or for the family, children, and it's wonderful that people are interested, but I always say, and I have some clients who are coming back, so previous clients are now come back, and I always say, okay, wait, let's just wait. Are you, the ideas that you have in place, are they coming from abundance, or are they coming from fear? And if anything is coming from fear or lack, I tell them that call me back when you're in abundance, and then let's talk again. Now, this is with clients that know me. With clients that don't know me yet, it's a process, isn't it? Because you either know this or not, right? Parenting from fear or from abundance. When you get it, you get it. And then you can use that in every other aspect of your life. So I use it when I'm off to the gym, or if I'm talking to my husband and I'm not happy, or, so we can use it. Am I talking and acting out of lack or abundance? Because if we are making a smoothie out of lack, I do not believe it will have the same nutritional, energetic benefit as a smoothie or anything else that we make out of abundance. Now, this is my personal belief. We may not have science to back it up, but everything is energy, and the energy we put into something will give us that energy that we've put into it back. So I think that's the main thing to think about, especially during this time of COVID-19, where people are looking to support their immune system. We can't be rushing into things and try and make everything perfect, because we may not have done that in the past. We need to take one thing at a time. And when you come from an abundance place, when you wake up in the morning and you feel better, you actually know what that one thing could be that you want to change. So I had a parent the other day. She said, the one thing, Nishti, that I can do is to change the omega-3 and omega-6 balance. And I said, you know what, that's enough for now. Even that one thing can really improve your diet and your family's diet overall, because omega-3 and omega-6, as a nation, we get too much omega-6, but we don't get enough omega-3 fats. And actually omega-3 fats will help if you have inflammation in your body, because inflammation is the main cause of all disease. So we want to make sure that we are just calming the body down with some nice healthy fats. And I think everyone will I've done a PDF to help you out. And I talk about mind, body, spirit in terms of how to support the immune system. And when it comes to body, there are things like omega-3, zinc, vitamin D, which I want to talk about a bit more, because to me that's like an essential topic. So this parent wanted to just change that one thing, and she felt good about it. She was in flow, she was in abundance, and then you act. And I'm just there to guide you. I didn't tell her to do it. So I really feel that that's the most powerful thing we can do at this moment in time, is to really be aware of that.
Talk about vitamin D. I'm interested to hear what you want to share about that.
Yeah, because vitamin D, it's a hormone essentially, and we get it from sunlight, it being exposed to our skin. But here in the UK, for instance, we do not make it until the end of this month, and then until from end of April to end of September. So we've got a small window, and it's only between 11 and 3 p.m. that you actually make vitamin D if you're outside. But most people are working during those hours. So it's quite difficult to obtain enough by direct sunlight. And obviously we have to also be careful. You can't just be out in the sun all day long. And if you add sunscreen onto you or your children, you are actually blocking the synthesis of vitamin D. So it's a difficult one. Now, the government guidelines say 10 microgram. I think in the US it's 15 microgram per day of vitamin D. But there is science to show that this is probably 10 times below what it really should be. Vitamin D, there are cells in the immune system called T cells and B cells that actually have a receptor that attaches onto vitamin D. So they are vitamin D dependent. So that shows how important vitamin D is, not just for bone health, but also to make sure our immune system is healthy. And there are now guidelines that say, instead of taking 10 microgram, take 20 because of the COVID-19. And I'm thinking it's about time because 10 microgram is not very much. I took 25 microgram and I was still deficient. And that's how I really started to do a bit more research, because most people take about 5 to 10 microgram. But I always say, make sure you get yourself tested. Are you deficient or not? If you are deficient, then you know what to do. If you are not, it would be nice to know what your blood levels are and then act, because most people, honestly, I would say 10 out of 10 clients are vitamin D deficient. I'm talking adults and children. And the interesting part is with vitamin D is in the liver, or the kidney, where we convert the inactive form of vitamin D to the active form. That enzyme, some people have a lot of it and some people don't have a lot of it. So again, one size does not fit all. I'm from the Middle East, which may explain why 25 microgram did not do me any justice, because my ancestors, because I very much believe in ancestral diets and we need to look at our genes and think about things like that. I probably require more vitamin D than someone who's grown up who's born and raised in the UK or Denmark or wherever it is. So it's so individual, and vitamin D is crucial. During this time of COVID-19, I would strongly recommend a vitamin D supplement because we don't get enough through the diet.
What about getting outside? So, in talking about vitamin D, we might not go and get tested right now because, gosh, none of us really want to do that. So we might not know our levels. Yeah. But, there are times in the day, as you said, that we can actually get out and just support our bodies a little more by getting an additional, dose of vitamin D just naturally, correct?
Yeah, so about 20 minutes in the sun without any sunscreen could give you, I can't say how much, And I can't say how often you should do that because it's so individual. I do it myself, like I do 20 minutes because I'm very conscious of it. And then I add my sun cream. But remember, at the moment, we're actually not making it anyway. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go out in the sun because it's positive energy, isn't it? But it's just to be mindful of that. To be honest, Sue, I mean, I go on my beach holidays and all of that, and I still was deficient. So now I take a lot more vitamin D. And when I had a blood test done about 3 months ago, and my blood levels weren't even that high. I mean, I'm not deficient anymore, but it's not like I'm sky high because it's a fat soluble vitamin. So we have to be careful that we don't overdose. But it's very, very difficult to overdose vitamin. So definitely go out in the sun. But if you're not taking a vitamin D supplement, I would strongly recommend that you do.
Nicole, you had a question?
Did. I think I fall in the category of people that would need more. Growing up in the Caribbean and also having beautiful dark skin, it's difficult to get the right level of vitamin D in the UK. But also I think just the added benefits you get from the sunshine. And I don't notice it while I'm here. I notice it when I get sunshine. So when I get sunshine, I can see an immediate difference in the way I feel. My energy level goes up. My mood tends to be more balanced. I feel just like a happier person. And all it is a little bit of sunshine. So I wanted to talk about what things we could probably look out for as signs to say that we might be deficient in vitamin D now that we're all stuck inside.
Yeah, so muscle pain and low mood, and just feeling tired. Those are, if you go to the GP and say, I'm always tired, they will do your vitamin D and your iron. But the reason why we feel so happy as well with the sun, I mean, just look at Mother Nature, how Mother Nature springs into happiness as soon as the sun is out, and we are extensions of nature anyway, right? But the brain converts tryptophan, which is an amino acid, into serotonin. And again, vitamin D is responsible for that. And serotonin is the happy hormone, right? So it's just, everything's beautifully linked. It's so amazing how everything is linked. And this time where everyone's struggling with low mood and anxiety, and good nutrition can definitely help you.
And sunshine.
And sunshine. Even if you're not making vitamin D, and sunshine.
Getting out. Breath of fresh air, for sure.
Yeah, I'm really valuing that because we're allowed to go out once a day and exercise. And you just value it even more now that you are restricted.
Michael, you have a question.
Yeah, I just want to sort of echo what Nicole said about just for being outdoors in the sunshine like you. I mean, I grew up in the Mediterranean, so for me, the absence of light and sunlight is really impactful. So as a question around that window that you referred to, is it because the winter sun just simply isn't strong enough?
Yeah, I think it's about the UVB lights.
Right.
It's the angle of the sun. It's when we get really scientific. So I wouldn't know the exact reason, but it's clear, and the evidence is clear that it's not all year round that we make vitamin D. But that's not to say that we shouldn't go out. We still must go out and enjoy the feel of the sun on our face, but this is the reason why vitamin D supplementation all year round makes sense to do. I do think that when it comes to the diet, we can obtain a lot of nutrients from food. I don't believe that you can just eat crap and take a multivitamin and then you're covered. No, I don't. But with vitamin D, it's the one thing I tell people you probably need to supplement for that.
I think nature is power. I mean, even if the sun is hiding behind the clouds, there's something to be said about just being outside in nature, connecting to everything in front of us that's beautiful.
And that also helps to build and support your immune system. that is not part of the body as such. It's more if we look at mind, body, spirit. So let's look at the spirit or soul. I would say nature falls into that category if we have to categorize things. It's, as we move into nature, we lift because we are an extension of nature. And I think we all know it. We may not put the word to it, but that's another way to lift yourself up. When we're moving and lifting that energy, that when we are inside all day and the energy gets dense, that will also affect your immune system and your body and your chi, right? So I like what they say in East. They call it, the vital energy or the energy, the chi. I quite like that word. And actually moving your body will create, and I don't know how you say it, but it will create chi or light chi, if you like. And that's what happens when we're in nature, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So talk about the mind.
Yeah.
So you talk about the body. I'd love to hear a little bit of thoughts about how we should treat our mind.
So when it comes to the mind, we might think about meditation as a first thing. And I have put that in this PDF that you're all going to get. But I feel like I want to talk to you about gut health first. Because gut health is, again, I've put it in the mind category because the mind and the gut are connected. The gut is your second brain. And we all know that when you feel really happy, you feel it in your gut. When you feel really upset and anxious, you feel it in your gut. Your gut is your second brain. And actually up to 70% of our immune system is in the gut. So the mind and the gut are connected. So if you are not looking after your gut, it will actually affect your mind and the other way around. So making sure that we are eating foods that support our gut health actually we could say it's part of also keeping the mind healthy, because I think it's up to 80% of our serotonin, which is our happy hormone, is made in the gut. So healthy gut, healthy mind, healthy gut. Because if your mind is healthy, you will choose better foods that for you. If you are aligned, if you're living in the present moment, if you started your day with meditation or journaling and you're not living in the past and the future, then you will take more empowered choices, I think, when it comes to what you eat and what you drink, because you're not thinking about what someone said yesterday. Does that make sense, Sue?
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone else? I hope that makes sense. I think the lesson with COVID-19, all of us have lived cluttered, decongested lives. We've lived overscheduled lives, and now is the time to release what's no longer serving us. And actually, if you think about it, when you're releasing things that no longer serve you, you're allowing the energy to flow. This is how we support our immune system. I just think it just couldn't be a clearer message with COVID-19. It's time to release what's no longer serving us.
So many ways. Michael, do you have a question? Michael, did you have a question?
I'm really loving what you're saying here, Nishti, because one of the things that I've seen more and more clearly over the years is that, both on a personal level and with my clients, is that when we look at well-being, emotional and psychological well-being, and when people start to see where that actually comes from, rather than necessarily their circumstances of the world around them, but actually it's something that is innately within us as human beings, and how we create those experiences, all kinds of experiences as human beings, where that's actually coming from, which is what we spoke about last week. What I notice that happens is when people reside in their well-being, when they're feeling okay about who they are and how they are, they naturally make good choices about what they eat.
Yeah.
You don't have to educate people necessarily. You might have to do a bit of educating, but essentially there's a wisdom inside it that says, actually, this makes sense to eat this, as opposed to the crap stuff. it just happens naturally. So you're already predisposed towards what nature decides, or what nature deems to be helpful for you, because it's part of the whole intelligence. We're all part of that universal intelligence. So we're drawn towards the things that make us are healthier for us, just because we're in a state of well-being. Conversely, of course, when we're not, then that's the times I know from personal experience, if I'm not feeling good about myself, I'm feeling anxious, then I tend to be drawn towards the foods that I think will suppress that feeling. So it looks like that's what's going to make the difference. It's the ice cream or the cake or the biscuits. It looks to me like that's what's going to make the difference to my inner state. But of course, it's not true and never is true. But it kind of looks like that in that moment, and therefore I'm drawn to it. So, yeah.
Really powerful. I actually think, I was just thinking, when we are feeling emotionally low and tired and fed up and all of that, when we are in fear or lack, we have a low vibration.
Yeah.
We will be attracted to low vibrational foods. But when we are high mental energy, we feel good about ourselves, we've done our work, or we're doing our work as much as we can every day, we are vibing high, so we will be attracted to high vibrational foods. I really think it's as simple as that.
Yes, I agree.
I think
Which
that's,
really,
sorry, Sue. I think that's a really scary point, because I ventured out, being very courageous, into the supermarket, and all of the processed foods, all of the canned foods, all out of stock. The fruit and veg aisle full of food.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
I had that same experience. Nobody was in the vegetable fruit aisle. I had it alone. It was like, great, I don't know where you all are, but I'm glad to have the space. Just stay away. No, I'm just kidding.
Powerful. Everyone's shopping from fear, so they are in low vibration. They will be buying canned mushrooms and God knows what, which I just do not believe is healthy for us. So interesting.
I wanted to circle back to what Michael said, because at the start of this conversation, before some of you joined, we were talking about the deep connection with ourselves and how important it is to connect with ourselves before we actually connect with anyone else or anything else. And that includes food, right? So it's really tapping into that inner space of who we are and what that feels like, looks like, and is like through wisdom and everything else, and moving forward in a space that honors that. And that's where the flow comes from, right?
It really
Honoring
does.
internal space of who we are.
Yeah, align your kitchen with your health goals. Align your kitchen with your health goals. If you don't want your children to eat a lot of fruit, as Sue said, don't bring in a lot of fruit. If you don't want your child to eat a lot of cake, biscuits, don't buy in the cakes and the biscuits. It's as simple as that. We need to align everything in our house to our health goals. Like we need to align our sacred space with a yoga mat. Otherwise, we won't be doing yoga, or whatever it is. So,
And I think we have to appreciate that as parents, if we're holding particular values about good nutrition, then we are educators. And we're educators by putting things in front of them they don't know about, they're not sure about, they may not like the look of. But what we start to see is that in time, they start to adapt a taste for it. Now, and at some point, they're going to be self-regulating, but they've been hopefully educated into that place where they then have the wisdom to see what it actually is important for them, and they self-regulate that. So one of the questions I'm always very reluctant to ask my children, and I may be wrong about this, is, what do you want to eat? Essentially give them the choice. Now, I think to a certain extent one give them a choice, but they need to be educated to taste different foods, because they don't know until they taste them. And this idea, oh, it's yucky, before they even taste it, I will not have that. I just will not have it. You taste it first, then you tell me whether you like it or not, but you just tell me you don't like it. So we have a job to educate, and that's why it's important for us as parents. And I love what you said, Nishti, about, the first thing you do is you look at the parents, not the children. The children are not the problem. It's the habits of the parents and the thinking of the parents. And so, yeah, we have to recognize that we have to be conscious around it and what's important, health, and make sure those values are transferred and spoken about. So that it becomes a conversation around the table as much as anything else. Not just, here's your food, eat it, forget, no questions asked. Just, hey, how does it look to you? How does it taste to you? What do you think? How would you like to change it in some way? But it becomes a conversation that they're involved in, so they get to see the importance of it.
May I add to that, especially when you're co-parenting, that becomes really valuable, because two different households, been there too. I've experienced way too many things in my young age, right? But in a co-parenting scenario, you can only educate what you can educate in your turf. You do not have restrictions or control or anything over, the other side, so to speak. I hate to call it the other side, but the other household. So education, and then you're empowering your child to make healthy and good choices as they continue to grow up, because they've learned about the nature of food. They've learned about the importance of food and, in sustaining our bodies, nutrients, all of those things.
I've always regarded that a sign of maturity is when you can look at a buffet table and don't feel that you have to eat everything. You can just take a few things. That to me sounds like a sign of maturity, when you don't have to eat everything.
That I am at that stage now. I've really learned to say no, and I don't allow the abundance to I don't try, because if you think about it, when you're at a buffet table and you want to eat everything, it's because you're coming from lack, because you're thinking you will never see food again. And thank God I'm moved away from there. But it's only through the work of, working with Dr. Shefali and looking at your own issues with food and life, and it's only that that's going to bring you into an empowered relationship with food, is when you value your own being and your own self. That's how it works. It's not the other way around.
Nishti, it's something like you say no to the food and yes to you.
Yes. So that's it. And that's what we do when we are on this spiritual path. We say yes to ourselves, because food is just, if we have a chaotic relationship to food, it's because we have a chaotic relationship to ourselves. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I go through turbulence as well, where I'm like, give me the chocolate cake, it's normal. But it's like, how many of those events do you have? And, how many do you not have? And as you say yes to yourself, you say no to anything else that's no longer serving you.
I think
and it's amazing to finally get there.
What was important, Nishti, from this conversation is recognition that when you reach for the cake, it's saying something about your relationship with yourself. Whereas before it was just like, this cake is going to make me feel good. And that was the be all and end all of it, right? I really need this cake, and that's it. But I think what I'm definitely taking away is that when I'm trapped in that space where I know I'm comfort eating, like I can put hand on heart and I know I'm comfort eating, it's now going to make me think more about what's happening in here today that I've missed or I haven't focused on, that's making me reach for the cake, as opposed to just saying the cake tastes good.
There you go. Because when we reach for the chocolate cake, it's because we are in a low, but as we said earlier, we are vibing low, and that's okay to vibe low. We can't always be vibing high, can we? I wish we could, but we can't, and this is okay. Life is up and down. That's what makes it so beautiful. So when we're vibing low, we acknowledge we are vibing low. But the chocolate cake is not going to do us any good. So a walk in nature, journaling, reaching out to a friend is more self-loving than to reach for the chocolate cake, which is just neutral. There's nothing to it that's going to make us feel good. And Michael says, why could we choose unhealthy food when we are, why would we choose unhealthy food when we are self-loving? Yeah, why would you? Why would you choose chocolate cake when you've been out on a run and you're feeling amazing and you've been eating right and you haven't lowered your blood sugar because you haven't been eating the right things? So there is a lot to it. Being self-loving is also being, educating yourself about nutrition and playing with nutrition and what works for me and my body. Like, I know if I start my day with just carbs, it doesn't work for me. I have to have a balanced protein, high fat diet for breakfast, and then I feel great. But that's only by playing around with things and getting to know me. And I would strongly recommend you all do that. No diet, no one size fits all. It's so individual. All the best to all of you during this time of COVID-19 that's putting us all into restoration phase and the decluttering phase. And I just think it's exciting times.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We're all about sharing and supporting this village. So if you found value in this episode, be sure to share it with your family and friends. And remember, this is a weekly show. So if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified of our next episode. As we always say in the village, you're just one connection away. With love and gratitude, empower us. Until next time.